This image is illegal in China. Tiananmen Square 1989 Massacre. To the infantile cynics who criticize posting this picture again. This photograph and the others which show what the Chinese Communist Party did to its own citizens cannot be posted too often. It's how people learn about what happened, and it's how uninformed people find out. If you don't like looking at these pictures once again, then don't look. But don't criticize others for reminding the world about the murderous thugs who run China. And for fuck's sake, drop the complaints about karmaing. How much could you possibly value imaginary internet points that you think reposting this image is reprehensible solely because it might be done for the sake of imaginary internet points? Stop it, get some help. Yep, people are overly obsessed about karma. Not everything on Reddit is about karma. What I find so distressing about the massacre and the events that unfolded is how much of a good job they did at covering it up. Not as many people as you would have thought even know this event occurred. Now I'm more terrified for the future of Hong Kong. Oh, they know. They just don't talk about it. Lately I have had the pleasure of speaking to several mainland Chinese people, at least I am 95% certain they aren't just trolls, and get their views on things. They don't believe Tiananmen Square happened, and believe every source that depicts it is false. They also believe Western media is brainwashing us to think badly of the Chinese. To top it off, they don't think their political system is all that different from anywhere else. England has a queen, Japan has an emperor. One man having all the power isn't all that different. And of course, no matter what I said, it was just me being brainwashed. It's pretty much like talking to a hardcore conspiracy theoretic. Were you talking to these people online? You're not going to get a very representative response, considering the state monitors everything their citizens do online. You are entirely correct. However, they have already broken the rules by bypassing China's censorship, so they don't have much reason to hold back. That's not to say the sample size isn't minuscule though. Had similar experiences online, even though it was just 3 different persons I've spoken to on the webs. I have had more experiences precisely like this in real life, in private conversations, far from censors, on the Chinese mainland and in other countries, with Chinese mainlanders which were exactly the same way, that I care to count. I have had contact to a decent number of Chinese expats, and Chinese students, in Germany. They realized the extent of the bubble that they were raised in, pretty quickly. It is very easy to blame people for their education, but you have to realize that it is not easy to abandon those parts of your early education, especially if was well done indoctrination more than anything else. Other, more recent examples, a friend of mine, social science academic, is the landlord of several Chinese expats. He rents out a flat to them, and lives in the same house. He regularly tells me how immense their interest in discussing German media reports about the Hong Kong/China situation is, and how willing to learn they are. Another friend of mine has been working for Mercedes-Benz in Peking for 4 years now. He tells me the same things. Oh, don't get me wrong, I don't blame the people at all, I blame their systematic brainwashing by the government. Yeah, and the important thing to take away is that those people will, mostly, come around quickly once exposed to free media for a while. Don't talk to people in the bubble, talk to those who made it out. In an age of anti-intellectualism and self-created social media bubbles, people growing up in authoritarian systems are not the ones to be blamed for their views. They are only to blame if they turn a blind eye and keep their minds closed in the face of mounting evidence provided to them. That's funny. Some of the PhD candidates I met actually became disillusioned with the West after being here for a few years, despite never intending to go back initially. They viewed their government as bloated and moronic more than anything. My wife is Chinese. She explained it to me this way. From their earliest education they are taught that there is no difference between the state, the people, and the party. So when Westerners talk about China, usually reference to the government, the people take it personally. There is no separation, I'm the average citizen's mind, between the government and the people. Spoke to one of my co-workers who's from mainland China about the protests. Her exact words were, the government needs to go in and shoot all the protesters. Bear in mind this is a woman who has a high-paying, well-respected job, and is extremely intelligent in every other aspect of her life. The brainwashing just runs that deep. I'm not a guy who usually gets angry at internet stuff, but that sub is the quasar of misinformation on Reddit, worse than T_D and CTR and co. It's a massive, never-ending stream of Chinese propaganda and Western phobic shit. All the posts are like, no guys, look, they are worse, it's the Red Scare, the Yellow Peril, remember the century of humiliation. No, you stupid Westerner, you don't understand shit about China, it's your media that has bias, not our state-owned, state-censored propaganda news outlet. This politician's grandfather made some money 150 years ago in the Opium Wars, so he doesn't get an opinion. And best of all, oh, you are Westerner? Banned, haha, get wrecked with the power of our freedom and prosperity. And that is one of the very few things in the internet that makes me actually rage beyond belief. And why I don't go on that sub anymore is slow, because I may or may not have like 3 accounts banned there. Holy shit, is that a shit show? Don't you dare put this on shit. Yeah, same thought. I've been subbed to them for a while, just to see how they view things. But lately I just ignore them, as it gets pretty bad. Makes sense though. If you and your family's living situation went from a 1/10, starving to death, etc., to a 3-4/10, at least not starving to death, but the people who gave you these luxuries told you it was a 10/10. All while committing and covering up heinous acts to shut people up. With little education and food on the table, I'd probably unknowingly believe them too, and maybe even celebrate Communist China Day, or whatever the fuck it's called. That's the issue with China when you boil it down. The people still love the government because thousands of people aren't dying every day due to terrible living conditions. Edit, aren't. What I find distressing is I'm in my late 20s and I've never seen this specific image. It's been so suppressed that I've went almost 30 years without seeing this, but seeing the standard standoff photo. Dave, look. I get what you are saying, but this gets posted like every month and usually makes it to r/popular. Sometimes reposts are okay. Some images and ideas are too important not to be spread freely. I generally agree with you. I'm just not so sure whether the ops are just doing it for the karma or to actually spread the message, and if it's the former, it's just depressing. I think smartphones are one of the biggest reasons we haven't already seen Hong Kong turn into Tiananmen Square too, who's not so funky boogaloo. If there had been a camera/portal to the internet in everyone's pocket in 1989, it would have been much harder for them to suppress the massacre as much as they have. They could lie and spin it however they wanted, but there would be tons of video evidence to the contrary working against them, and pictures sway opinions way more than words. Unfortunately, in 1989, anyone with a camera taking pictures would be a target. They would have had to be there and take pictures/video, escape alive, get it developed, and smuggle it out of the country. It's a goddamn miracle any pictures got out at all. Exactly. The same events today would be broadcast live all across the world by thousands and thousands of HD quality cameras. A good job only inside China. The entire rest of the world knows what happened in detail. I'm a history teacher, a young man who had just arrived from China who refused to believe what happened in Tiananmen Square when we discussed it in class with photos. He said it couldn't possibly have happened that way because in his school that had told him that criminals and looters had been entirely the cause of the problem, and that the army was only called in to, heroically, calm things down. It's easy to brainwash people. Just look at today's Trump voters who think he's a great man. Exactly, it's not that different in the West. We only get what the media tell us and are just as blind to the truth. I heard yesterday that America is the greatest country because literally anyone could be president. This was to prove how free we were, and why it's worth fighting these wars to maintain it. I also heard from Chinese students how they have the best government in the world. It doesn't take much to rock their world, but they simply clam up and don't really want to know. Even the more enlightened ones avoid having much of an opinion but do acknowledge that they won't talk about any of it once they land on Chinese soil. Okay, now think about what you said about cult-like mentalities, and consider the possibility that this also applies to you. It's fine to not like Trump, but he is being demonized on a daily basis, and the majority of the stories about him turn out to be false. Asterisk the Trump ex-Russia collusion thing? Debunked. Asterisk the Kavanaugh serial rapist thing? All of her witnesses said that she was lying. And she also didn't file any complaint, meaning that she was about to destroy an innocent person's life while she will suffer no consequences. Asterisk the Trump ex-Ukraine scandal? He released the full audio, and the Ukraine president said Trump did not pressure him, and agreed to reopen the investigation into his corruption, which according to the media is not allowed, but saying Trump colluded with Russia for 3 years without any evidence is. If all you hear is how Trump is bad, yet all those sources are proven wrong time and time again, and any support of the guy is immediately almost religiously condemned, could it not be possible that you yourself are indoctrinated? Can't I say the same about people who blindly hate Trump for everything? Look at the Covington MAGA hat kid for example. All he did was standing while smiling, and the media demonized him to the point that he got death threats against him, while doing nothing wrong. Heck, we had a 3-year-long investigation on corruption from Trump, and they found nothing. Now Trump asks, not forces, as the released call shows that, the Ukraine president to investigate Biden, and all of a sudden that is ground for impeachment? If anything, I found that this kind of cult-like mentality mostly from the left. You even have to state that I'm not a Trump supporter before anyone takes you remotely serious here on Reddit when you speak out against the rabid anti-Trump mindset. If anything, the fact that you cannot speak openly in his defense before being accused of everything under the sun, shows that those that support him have on many occasions had to question their beliefs. While those that don't support him, can just continue to live inside a bubble. Did you even actually visit one of his rallies? Or saw an unedited video of him speaking at one? He speaks to the common American people, who apparently are a lot less indoctrinated than you. It's easy to brainwash people. Just look at today's Trump voters who think he's a great man. This shows you haven't thought this through too much. Trump has not changed the opinion of very many voters himself, instead he has adopted the political views of the voters. This is how politicians get elected. It's not just Trump. Look at Bernie when he had real traction in 2016, and his own fucking party sabotaged him because he didn't represent their financial and political interests. You get to vote for who they say you can vote for. Just look at today's Trump voters who think he's a great man. What? Don't bring Trump into this. Unlike China and Tiananmen Square, Western news media isn't suppressed, and in fact, if anything, it's overwhelmingly anti-Trump. Trump supporters have full access to both sides of the story on Trump and can make informed decisions. Students in China cannot. There's 2 American media groups, and you know it? There is the media ecology centered around Fox News and the Republican Party, and the independent news media. Republicans have been very free to live in their conservative media bubble, and I think it's time that we recognize just how pernicious that is. That you think that it's only Republicans that live in their bubble is laughable. Not saying they aren't, but that you think they are the only ones doing so. Also, what is this magical independent news media you are talking about? It is genuinely irritating to find a bunch Redditors claim some massive cover-up because they were somehow ignorant of one of the most significant events of the late last century and one of the most iconic photos and videos of all times. Wow, pretty interesting. I actually had some respect for your view until that last sentence bringing Trump into the discussion. I truly hope you are keeping your personal political views out of the classroom. I am not a Trump supporter. I think he's an overbearing, pompous ass, but after watching politics for the last 50+ years, I also consider the current competition. When the ideology is boiled down, Democrats want little more than to increase taxes, give my money to others, flood the country with illegals, indoctrinate our youth, and most recently, eradicate the Bill of Rights. That being the case, Democrats leave many of us no choice but to vote Republican. But you go ahead and keep thinking people are brainwashed. Well, your whole characterization of the Democratic platform makes you sound pretty brainwashed. When you boiled it down, you took a biased standpoint that is pretty much repeating right-wing talking points. Yeah, he does sound pretty brainwashed. Actual Democrats are all about looting us as much as they can on behalf of the ultra-rich, just like the Republicans. Is he wrong though? In the last Democratic debate, all they did was gather to illegal aliens and promise them free healthcare. What about the actual American citizens? Some even spoke Spanish in the most cringy way possible. You are free to disagree with him, but the Democrats, their policies do support open borders, some directly said so, and giving free benefits to people who should not even be here in the first place. As for increased taxes, just look at California. The people voted in Democrat politicians who gave extra benefits to people, but had to increase the taxes to support that. The result? Many open-minded Californians fled to red states, only for them to continue voting in blue politicians because they had been indoctrinated from a young age into thinking that they were the caring party. Buying out the media really did pay itself back to the Democrats with interest. LOL, the media handed Trump the presidency by giving him tons of publicity at a stage when he didn't have the numbers to warrant any attention. How much free advertising did he get, and yet people act like the media treated him so unfairly? Is he wrong though? In the last Democratic debate, all they did was gather to illegal aliens and promise them free healthcare. What about the actual American citizens? Some even spoke Spanish in the most cringy way possible. So speaking Spanish is catering to illegals? There are millions of people here legally who speak Spanish. Sorry that people not speaking anything other than Murican offends you so much. The people voted in Democrat politicians who gave extra benefits to people, but had to increase the taxes to support that. The result? Many open-minded Californians fled to red states, only for them to continue voting in blue politicians because they had been indoctrinated from a young age into thinking that they were the caring party. And yet, which states are the biggest recipients of financial support from the federal government? That's right, red states. It's okay to take the money, just not to pay it, right? In California, everything is expensive. Food, housing, not just taxes. Guess why? 'Cause it has a huge successful economy. Unlike most red states. So I personally believe Jesse Smollett. I don't see why anyone had reason to assume he was lying. It's not like hate crimes are non-existent in this country. You mentioned cringy Spanish speaking at the debate in the same paragraph of talking about illegals, so it wasn't me who made the connection, but okay. Statistics are biased if they don't support your point of view, right? I guess there's no reason whatsoever why education level directly correlates with support for Trump, right? I don't know, but I do know that with all the propaganda you are spewing, that you are guilty of that which you accuse others of being. It's called projecting. And hate crimes are on the rise, yes, but not the ones that are white against black. That is what happens when you only report negative about one race, and prefer not to report about another. Victimhood complex mentality and media bias is dividing this country. You don't have to agree with me. But please be aware of your own hypocrisy in this matter. Thank you. All of what you said was true, as proven by whom the Democrats currently gather to, and what kind of policies they support, and sadly the fact that you were downvoted shows just how badly these very open-minded people are indoctrinated themselves. Reddit is a hive mind of groupthink, and anyone who doesn't condemn the president for not thinking like they do, is considered brainwashed. I was downvoted? LOL, fortunately I don't hold those votes in very high regard. Unfortunately, far too many people on both sides subscribe to the hive mentality. I prefer to think for myself. True, I guess that is the best way to go about this. It just annoys me that those who see their own open-minded intellectualism as a grand virtue, don't realize that they may have been indoctrinated themselves. But I guess that's Reddit for ya. Thanks for watching. If you could like, subscribe and comment best Reddit stories for more Reddit videos.